Hello and welcome back. This is another episode of the SoapyRao show. It's lovely to have you here. And as always, there's some earth-shattering stuff that I want to talk about. No, not really. I don't know why I have nothing earth-shattering to talk about. But, interesting. But, honestly, man, I really feel I don't know what I feel after, listening to and, finding out about that submersible that recently, imploded. Of course, I'm not an expert, a submariner by any means, and don't know anything about the details, because if you ask anyone, I overheard a few people that I was out at a friend's place and they were talking about the hull, and the integrity of the hull was compromised, the design was flawed, they didn't go through the right channels of approval, they didn't get the right certificates, they didn't get the licensing properly done, they did it in international. I don't know any of it. I've read some of it, but I'm going to clearly from the outset say I have no fucking clue about submarines. Just that I am freaked out by anything underwater, short or prolonged. Like if it's in a swimming pool, I'll submerge myself, and that's pretty much the extent of my submersible capabilities. Like I'll go in, I'll blow out some bubbles, and then I'll come out like crazy. I freak out because I don't know, some people are like, I'm a water baby, and some other friends like, oh dude, I just love the water. I can be in the water the whole day. I can scuba dive. I can't. I remember once attempting snorkeling. I think my wife and I, Nivi and I, were in Philippines in some small little island called Porta Galera. It was beautiful. It was one of these small canoes which was motorized, and the guy, we took these scuba boots, these little booties with the flippers, and then they gave us this eyepiece, this one face piece, whatever it's called, face mask, and then they put us this little mouth thing. What's it called? It's got a word. Anyway, I don't know what it is. Just you bite onto it, and then first thing in my head, I'm like, who else is bitten onto this? Ugh. And then you have the snorkel sticking out, and the moment I jumped into the water, I felt like those flippers were dragging me down, and my wife said, just relax, just let the flippers float you. I'm like, fuck that. It's like something's pulling me down. And after, you probably heard this from me before, after watching Jaws, anything with more than 5, 6, 7 feet of depth gives me the fucking creeps. I don't know what it is. And apparently they had a lot of coral there, so like Nivi was just like half the time, just wow. And then I was getting bored, so I jumped out of the boat pretty quickly. I freaked out, came back on the boat, took off those things. Actually, I kept them on for some time. It looks cooler on the boat than it feels underwater. And then I got bored after 15 minutes, so then I told the guy, do you mind if we just go and get some beers? Because now that's the kind of water I can be under, I can be over, I can be in, I can be out. And then we started the boat and we started going, and then my wife's head pops up. She's like, where do you think you're going? And we're going to get some beer. Would you mind waiting around here with the coral, which is so beautiful, which makes you feel one with the planet? So then I'm coming along. So then we said, by the time she gets onto the boat, it's going to take too long. Every second is precious when you're hunting beer in an island, off an island, I don't know. So then we made her hold on to the side and we chugged along. And yeah. Anyway, that wasn't what I wanted to talk about. But firstly, it's fucking freaky, man. Going down, 3.8 miles, 4 miles, 6.5 kilometers to see that boat. I mean, first of all, I think that ship is jinxed. I don't think the ship is jinxed. The guy messed up movie Titanic. I think he was looking at Kate Winslet's tits, and then he lost focus and hit the iceberg. But that's the true story of how the Titanic sank. But what I really think was, it went down many, many years ago. And I watched the Titanic one many years ago as well. It was just right after when the ship sank. Yeah, but obviously James Cameron has a lot to say on this issue because he's one of those deep sea explorers, and explorers themselves. First of all, this had some crazy people who were willing to do crazy things, and one of them even went to outer space. And yeah, it's their thing, right? And I really respect that level of dedication. Like the guy who took his son, the other guy, I don't know their names, but businessman who really had and I think that needs to be some kind of extra level of curiosity, or extra level of drive, or extra level of, I don't know what it is for life that makes them, once they reach that level of whatever, success or comfort or ability to kind of just sit back, that makes certain people push beyond, right, to go. I don't know if it's status, because this was just to go to the depths and find out about the Titanic, and there were obviously previous explorations where they found things, but all of that. I think the couple of things that amaze me are that there's that human spirit to go down there, that risk taking ability, which is crazy, which not all of us have. Like, I think back even sometimes when I read these books of the initial settlers or the initial people who would go to these continents, and guys who go to the South Pole, who would go to Everest. I read this book called Paths of Glory by Jeffrey Archer, which was about George Mallory coming across from England, not knowing what they're going to encounter, just knowing that there's a mountain, then mapping everything, and then just that takes some level of human, I would say, determination, this eagerness, this need for understanding, this need for knowing, curiosity, courage. It's just brilliant that. And in today's day and age, when we think that everything is discovered, everything that needs to be mapped has been done, everything that needs to be explored has been explored, then they go to the deep and the depths of these places, which are 6 miles, 5 miles, 4 miles. I don't know, the Titanic, maybe that was one of the things that they wanted to see, but just go into that depth. I mean, I told you, 15 feet or 7 feet, I cap out, man. But to go in that and then having that happen to you, it's, obviously horrible, and it's fucking scary. See, that's why I stay on the fucking land. But of course, something can happen on land as well. But it's just, man, I can't even imagine that kind of panic when that level of pressure is put on and it implodes. And I don't know. I just hope it was painless. Oh, yeah. Because, when it comes to it, I don't think I make a good explorer. I'll safely wait for others to go where no man has gone before, and then I will wait for the travel agent to say it's now fine. But the problem with that is that you don't get the serenity, you don't get the pristine first glimpse of these places, right? You don't get to be because now Mount Everest is just like fucking walking down Brigade Road, fucking 3 people have died, heat stroke or whatever, cold. And then it's jam, you get literally 30 seconds to be on the peak or the summit of the tallest mountain. So it's become, very commercial, which is, of course, what happens if you wait for everyone to go, the first groundbreakers to go get the first glimpse. They get all of it, right? It comes at a huge risk, but they get to chill for like hours on end, or how much ever time the weather permits it. But even these guys, if they'd gone down, or people like James Cameron went down, you get some of the best shots, you get some of the best time with these pieces of history, or these natural wonders, or whatever you've gone to explore. And some researchers go down, but there's a bit of a trade-off. So what are you willing to settle for? Because I'd like to be like maybe not even the third or fourth. Like once they build a decent size like sort of hotel close by, or they have like a like an underwater elevator or something, then I'm like, you know what? Okay, cool. Even then I'm like, fuck. I don't like confined spaces, whether it's a lift or whether it's a underground bunker. Like when a few years back we won this kind of trip to South Korea. Not kind of, but we did win this trip to Seoul. And one of those things they had chalked in the calendar for us to go see were those tunnels at near the demilitarized zone between South and North Korea. I didn't go, dude. Yeah, fuck it. So I don't like confined spaces. So the whole submersible idea, some people say being underwater feels like the most amazing experience because it's a vast expanse of emptiness, and you get this beautiful light that kind of seeps through the water. You get the silence that only underwater can, give you. And you have a fucking shark, which of course is beautiful. I don't know. I just have this, maybe it's my flaw, maybe it's my weakness, maybe it's my fear, but fuck it, I'm proud of it because I'm not going there. I'm not designed to be underwater. These lungs are good to have a cigarette on air, on land. So just putting that out there. But if that's your, whatever floats your boat, if you're, of course, gonna sick. Anyway, so first of all, I salute those, the bravery and the courage and the determination and the dedication and the willingness to push the boundaries of human potential. But it also sucks horribly for those people, especially, the family, like, I don't even know these people, and I'm just like, man, what were those last seconds like? Hopefully painless, but and having to live with that, just terrible. And that's another thing, right? The people who they leave behind, like George Mallory in the book, his wife, or like Francis Drake, his wife, or whoever these explorers are, they always leave someone behind, and those people have to deal with it, right? Deal with the loss, because these guys have this itch to be curious and explore, but clearly lives are shattered, lives are hurt. So I don't know, I don't have the answers, But you can also be at home your whole life with that partner, and after a point, they're like, fuck, I hope he dies, you know? So they're both extremes. And I think somewhere in the middle. Don't be an explorer, don't be a bore. I think somewhere in the middle. Go out for a little bit. Like, what did you find today, honey? Well, I discovered this crazy strain of new carrots at Namdari Vegetables. Or this new flavor of Lay's chips. You could be an explorer in your own way. I went exploring and I found out that I can put my dick in a rabbit hole or something. I don't know. I don't know why I had to go down the dick. Sandeep. I don't have to go there, but I did. Sorry, my screen kind of blacked out. Anyway, before I go into rabbit holes where my dick shouldn't go, let me talk about today's guest. Mr. Colby Black is a digital advertising, well, he's a digital creator who specializes in advertising. He's been in the field for over 20 years. And I had a lovely chat because Kobe's one of those people I just instantly connected with. We speak about money things. We speak about being fathers. We speak about kind of navigating life in our 40s. We talk about the sort of experience of living through certain times which you think you're prepared for, but you're not. This idea of family and friends and creating a sense of community and kind of understanding what lies ahead for us as fathers. And also I think for many people, right, what lies ahead is a very unknown, and you kind of project with today's information thinking that we know what the future holds, but many times it's just, you know what, it's best to just say it's uncertain, and I'm just going to go with today as my frame of reference and just continue doing what I'm doing, because many times you don't know what the future holds for you. So yes, amongst other things, we speak about the impact of advertising and how that shapes our minds, influencers, and how that's sort of the new space where advertising has gone and what that holds in store for us. And yeah, and frankly, just a fun conversation where we cover a lot of things, and I can pretend to do a proper introduction, say, and then this might benefit you, and this you might appreciate, and that you might understand, and that you might resonate with, and this might be relevant to you. But honestly, fucking listen to it. You'll have fun, because Kobe and I hit it off, and we had a fun chat. And yeah, thank you for listening. And of course, Kobe, if you're listening, appreciate you being on the show. And till next week, take care of yourself, my friend. As always, I really appreciate you coming and listening week in, week out. All right, till then, take care. God bless. Take care of yourself. Cheers. I said take care twice. Doesn't matter. Colby Black, it's absolutely fantastic having you on the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
You know, I interrupted our conversation before I started recording because I wanted to get that on air, because sometimes you just meet someone and we've never connected before and we just hit the road running, and it's absolutely fantastic because we were talking about our respective daughters. And, you know, it's amazing what you were saying, because there's this idea of, you know, we're going back a few years to 2020, 21, and that's when your wife and you had your baby during the lockdown, and then everything kept getting pushed forward, right? Like there's, until this particular parameters met, we're not going to open up, or until this is particularly followed, we're not going to go out, or this is done, we're not going to go back to work. It just seemed this idea of fear-led decision-making by governments, by authorities, which kind of sort of transpired into our way of life, right? Because we became these people evidently conditioned to fall for these messages. And how was everything you had done till then prepared you? How did it prepare you for fatherhood, for being in a situation like that, which was so unknown, uncertain, and also full of fear? So everything you had learned in life, were you ready for what you were dealt?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. Like there's parenting books back here that I read, right? They're pretty as a backdrop. I read them and I was like, yeah. No, not prepared at all. And it's funny because my daughter was born September 1st, 2021. The evening of September 1st, 2021, a hurricane or remnants of a hurricane hit New York City.
Okay.
And we were in the hospital. Everything was fine, and it was like we were obviously wiped out. Just huge highs and joys. And we laid down at 8 o'clock that night. We're out and asleep, and then the storm hit. And I woke up the next morning and was like looking on Instagram, and I got a nephew that was a freshman at NYU, and he had pictures of his dorm with like water and flooding in it. I was like, what happened? We are half a mile away from that. Oh my god! And then the second night rolls around, and we like clearly slept. We slept like the proverbial babies that first night, wiped out. Great. We wake up the next morning. I go out and get newspapers, and everything's beautiful and great, and the sun's shining. Like, this is great. Second night, kids crying all night. Like, won't settle down. Is crying, sleeping in the room with us. Nurses are coming in every like 20, 30 minutes, checking on her, checking on us, checking on mom. And then finally at like 11 o'clock, we're like 4 hours deep of crying with this kid pretty consistently. One of the nurses just goes, "Oh yeah, it's second night syndrome," and just leaves. And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And I Google it, and there's this like phenomenon that the second night of a kid, the first night of a kid's life, everybody's wiped out and tired, and it just seems kind of dream state, and all the emotions, and your adrenaline runs out. You crash, you fall asleep. Second night, kid realizes, "Shit, I'm stuck here. Like, I'm not going back in that cool, warm, safe place. This is where I live now." And the kid freaks out. And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, all these friends and family members had kids before us, and nobody mentioned this to me. So like, we get home, a couple days or whatever, and I get in the elevator with this guy that lives in our building, and his wife is pregnant. His wife is like 6 months pregnant, and I go, "Rob, I'm going to tell you something. We're on day 3, day 4. It is harder than I thought it would be. And there's this thing called second night syndrome. Google it now. We went to all these classes. I read all those books. Nobody ever mentioned this stupid thing to me." I tell him, and he's literally like up against the wall of the elevator, like about to run away. Like, he's afraid of me and scared. Like, I just put the fear of everything into him, right? And I get up to our apartment. I walk in. I go, "I saw Rob in the elevator." And my wife's like, "How's his wife doing?" And I go, "Yeah, I may have gone a little too hard with Rob. I think I scared the crap out of him. Like, all the blood drained out of his head." And I told him about like, my wife's like, "You can't do that. Like, she's like, he's gonna run away." And so, like, I run it anyway. I run into Rob like after like the night or two. I ran into him actually when they brought his kid home, and I go, "Dude, how's it going?" And he goes, "Second night, kid was crying and screaming his head off," and I just went, "Colby was right, and you prepared me." And like,
Nice.
so now, and it's like I've told like 4 or 5 parents this, as it's coming to dads especially, and like they're all like, "What the hell?"
Sometimes I think, I was telling you, you kind of get so caught up in your own head about, being in that role, and of course, as a father, you have all these, you put this pressure on yourself, right? Like, you want to be the best father. You want to be the best in that role you've taken up. And many times, any new avenue you walk down, whether it's a new relationship, whether it's a new job, whether it's a new manifestation of your interest or whatever it may be, sometimes the baggage you hold on to, it sort of, rears its head, and it's kind of, those patterns do repeat itself. But especially as a father, I think what happens is this need to kind of, say, this is my child. And in the process, if you feel like you're letting go, that you feel that you're not going to be there for her. But, someone is telling me the most important thing is to understand that, your relationship with your child, son or daughter, is irreplaceable by anyone else, right? Because, but at the same time, for them to develop this relationship is part of their life. Like, they need to have the relationship with their grandparents, with their cousins, with their uncles and their aunts, because that's what their life is, right? By you denying them that, you create this sense of, "Oh, I've done what I can, keeping her close to me," but you're depriving them of a life which they have to live, which I find, very important to remember.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that again, probably my favorite quote is from Anais Nin, and it's "We see the world as we are, not as it is." Right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to like, I only had one grandparent that I was really around much and close to. All my grandparents, 3 of them died by the time I was 2. So I had one grandparent that I was super close to. She lived across town. And that grandmother to me was just like the most amazing thing and perfect thing. And she took care of me a lot. And we hung out together, and we had the same birthday. And so I had a really good close bond with her. And, I just, until my child got here when I was 45, like, I was like, 45 years of grandparents are magic, right? When the grandparents started to come up here to visit my daughter, as a parent, I was like, grandparents suck. Like, well, first of all, like, none of my child's grandparents, my parents and in-laws, whatever, live in New York, so they're not New York literate, right? And so they would come up here and it would just be like having another child, right? Like I had someone else I had to make their meal decisions for and get them on the
Mm.
train or get them on the car and drive them around and get them in their car, get them in their Airbnb or like, you know what I mean? So it was like I had an extra kid who also couldn't take care of my kid. Like they weren't changing diapers. They weren't like the kid would start crying and they would be like, "What do I do?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"How did you raise me and my wife? Like, how did you guys? What are we doing? How?
And there's this
How?"
sense, as a kid, you loved your grandparents. Like
Yeah,
when I was growing up, two of my grandparents were around. My dad's mom, and my mom's dad, and they really doted on me, right? In whatever
yeah,
the memories I have. But now it's like I'm sure my baby's daughter's only one, so I'm sure she can't
yeah,
think. But those things, those impressions are so profound that they're not at this point. They're not sort of reading out books, whatever. But she loves being around them, right? Both sets of grandparents. She
yeah.
has both sets of grandparents, which I think is fantastic. So I get it. Like even though I love, and now as a parent who's the intermediary between her and the grandparent,
Yeah.
I get irritated beyond anything. I'm like, guys, can you just shut the fuck up, right? Like you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, and like, you were talking about like bringing your own baggage or mistakes or reliving
Yeah.
the thing or whatever. Now you're a parent. Like, it is also interesting parenting the grandparents a little bit.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
like my mom is just constantly like, "Oh, you're so pretty. You're such a pretty baby." Not to me. I'm obviously pretty, but like to my baby, to
Yeah.
my child, is like, "You're so pretty. Oh, look who's so pretty. Look how so pretty." And it immediately started irritating me, even when she was just, a month old, when my daughter was
Mm,
just a month old. Uh, and so I've been biding my time and biting my tongue. And I was like, when is it that I finally say like, let's find other things to comment on for this
mm.
kid than just her looks, right? Because like, uh, hopefully my daughter will look a lot like my wife, but there's a chance she's going to look like me, and that would be bad for her in the looks department. So like, there's a chance, there's a 50-50, it's a coin toss. My kid might be as ugly as me, right?
Mm.
And so like let's start half preparing for that half reality that like maybe let's comment on her curiosity. Let's comment on how kind she was, how great it was that she just shared, how great, how curious she is. Like let's
Things
start
that
picking
she's
up on
doing,
those.
but things not things that she is. Right, right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, if my daughter should happen to be attractive, I have no doubt that society will inform her of that. But if my daughter is curious or kind or smart, I don't know that society will reward her and comment on that and build her up for that. So like,
So
I'm gonna we're
yeah.
gonna zag where society zigs, and we're gonna try to fertilize the parts that we want that we can, and like, we can steer her in theory to be more kind and curious and reward her. Well, I guess we can reward her kindness and her curiosity,
And the looks, as you
or
said, it's
reward her
the thing
beauty.
is
Yeah,
that's one of those things that is whether we like it or not, it is such a big pillar of our modern day society, right? Whether it's good or bad. But yeah, it's very interesting. You mentioned these other traits or these other behavior, which is not recognized and not given enough. Sort of attention by people, right? Like empathy, consideration,
yeah,
recognizing those things in people and helping out and being empathetic. And I mean, I don't know if those are the exact words or emotions, but uh, where do you draw the line when it comes to, because it sort of reflects two different ways of bringing up a child, right? Because you live in the US, help is hard to come by. Your parents also live farther away. It's your wife and you pretty much doing most of the work. But in India, even though my wife and I are doing a lot of the work, we have a lot more help. We live with my parents. We have extended family living right there, her grandparents. So it's similar yet very different.
yeah,
But as a result, yours might seem harder work, but it's also a lot more scope for you guys to raise your child in the way with your value system, and also put in a
yeah,
lot more inputs that are aligned with you too, right? But here,
yeah,
while it comes with certain benefits and comes with certain help, there is a lot more lines being crossed, right? People kind of the way she observes people around speaking, whether it's the staff at home, whether it's my parents, and unconsciously picking up on certain things, right? And
yeah.
even other things like value systems, like the idea of God, the idea of religion, the idea of things. And so what is your thing? Because I have, by virtue of where I live and with whom I live and the time I kind of the kind of time I'm spending at home, I have automatically have to live within a certain thing. But what is your outlook towards this particular
Yeah.
exposure that children are put? Um,
Yeah. And let me say a few things. One, I was talking to a friend of mine. Well, I went to my cousin's bachelor party in February. He got married, and we're back in Texas. And there was a guy there, one of his friends, who had just had a kid, whose kid's about my age, and he had like three others, I think.
mhm,
And I was kind of complaining about how hard it could be. And
mhm,
one of the other guys was like, "Man, nobody talks like that. Like, not in a bad way. But he's like, everybody's just look how great my kid is. Look, my kid hit a home run today, and my kid, blah blah blah. Everybody's on social media living this life and showing how great their kids are." He's like, "Nobody ever talks about how hard it is." And I was like, I sailed into this thing with the hubris of a middle-aged white guy, thinking I can do anything, and quickly realized that it was going to be way harder than I thought.
mhm,
In fact, like the second day my daughter was home, my wife had to go back to the hospital for preeclampsia. And it was me and a 3-year old or a 3-day old kid for the first time. Like the first day my kid was home, it was me alone with her and our dog. The wife was back in the hospital and there was no answer. I don't know anything. I looked at the kid. I was just like, we got to get through this. Like, how we're going to do it? If you'd asked me last Wednesday if I could do this, I would say absolutely not. And here we are.
mhm,
So there's a lot of just learning and on the fly and picking it up, and amazing how much that is. But I was also just say, like, people say no one else talks like how hard it is. Um, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, all you ever do is complain about how hard it is. And she's like, growing up, my dad talked about, like, made us feel not wanted, and she's like, I hope you never feel that way. And so that conversation with my friend last week has really made me think about what I put out in the terms of this.
mhm.
Like it is hard. It is absolutely worth it. Like, it is absolutely worth it. It is better than I thought it would be. It is definitely harder than I thought it would be, but it is better than I thought it would be. And just now, uh, my just before this, my daughter helped me pair up her socks out of a load of laundry, and it was just the most magical thing, right? And it was just like an iPad game where it's like pairing things up, and I just pull a sock out. I go, which one does this one look like? And she grabbed the pink one, and which one does this one look like? She grabbed the green one, and I was just like beaming happy, loving it. Like, there's moments like that are, like, 3 years ago, you had told me you're going to be lighting up over your kid matching socks. I'd be like, you're insane.
Mm.
So there are other moments that are amazing. Also, the fact that here I am speaking now as a global expert on parenting is also baffling to me. That we're having a global conversation here about how to parent, and I'm like, what? Me? How?
Yeah, and that's
Uh,
the beautiful thing, right? These are things that you don't read in books or in parenting groups and
yeah,
it's nice because it makes you, it helps you to go through this realizing, you know what, it's okay to have those thoughts, because
yeah.
yes, it is hard. You will get angry, you will get irritated, you get frustrated. You might even snap at your child saying, "Shut, why aren't you sleeping?" When you're rocking and she's howling. But
Never did that.
sorry.
Yeah, I did that. I did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but you feel like a horrible human being. But then, like I have someone else who's telling me about his son, who's a little older than my daughter, and he's like, "It's okay, you're saying it, but your love is unconditional." And my wife sometimes like, "Don't use that tone with her." I'm like, "Oh, now here we go into this one."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to ask you,
But
we're both in our 40s. I just turned 40, and I
yeah.
think you're in your mid 40s. Do you
Yeah.
feel you're more ready for it now? Do you feel like your energy is a little lower? You wish that you were a little younger with patience and with being more open to certain things? Because this is something that I ask myself a lot of the time. Not like I could have had kids when I was a lot younger because I was a kid myself and still am one, but a little better. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Uh, you know, One of the things that frames, like, when I started my career, I started an advertising agency, and I started on the media side, like planning and buying, and
Right.
planning where ads go, right? And then switched over to being more of a producer, project manager, right? And
Hmm.
so there's plenty of times when I get into a project and I draw from that couple of years that I spent in media at the beginning of my career, even still now, 20 years later, where I'll be like, "Have we talked to media agency? Is it worth the buy? Like, what are we doing? And like, I don't know how to approach projects without that media background.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know how I would approach parenthood as a 25-year-old. Like, I don't know how I would do that. I don't know how I would have these skills. Now, granted, I'm not prepared at 47, so I was definitely not prepared at 25.
Right, right.
Um, no, I don't regret it. And also, like, there's an interesting thing in my family. My dad was, I grew up in rural West Texas, like
Mhm.
very rural West Texas. And my dad was 34 when he had me, which was ancient at the time in the mid
Yeah.
70s, right, in West Texas. Uh, he was the youngest of nine children, and his dad was. I'm not looking. I've got. I do. Forgive me, poor fathers. I'm doing this without a net. I don't have the notes in front of me. I think my grandfather was 41 when my dad was born. So,
Wow. Yeah.
and then my grandfather was quite old when my great grandfather had him, and so that that great grandfather, literally, I sort of God, came over from England on a boat in the 1870s and was a marshal in West Texas, like total like Wild West lawman guy. So like I'm not that many generations removed. So like I have sort of a history to draw on of being an old dad.
Mm.
Now, and so like I don't know, like that's my line, that's my lineage. There's plenty of young fathers and mothers in my family, but like yeah, nah, I don't know how to do it any other way. I don't know how I would have done it any other way. Maybe that's a
And
lack of empathy or whatever
yeah,
on
no,
my part, but like
it totally resonates with me, because I asked you that question because we put such a importance on physical number, right? You have to have a kid by this age, you have to have a house by this age, your kid has to be,
yeah,
you have to be at this age when they graduate. And it it didn't bother me, but it's still because for years you're told that and you see around you people doing that. Of course, now, earlier, as you said, like people who get married at 20, 21, 23, they have a kid, and next thing they're 40, they're like, yeah, my kid's in college, I can go wild. And you see that right now, people in their 40s, their kids are going away for university and they're going buck wild, right? Because they're 40,
yeah,
but at the same time, their emotional growth is still stuck at 18 because they just had to do these things. But if you
well,
ask me,
and
sorry,
go ahead,
now
go
I
ahead.
just want to finish this thought about the physical number. It means nothing because, yeah, I did turn 40, but I've actually felt for the first time that I can take care of myself and I'm actually content or at peace with what I am. And I spoke to you about this right before we started recording.
Yeah,
Like I've taken stock of the flaws I have, the bad traits I have, my
yeah,
shortcomings, and I'm not denying them. I'm not celebrating them, but at the same time, I've also recognized that I do have certain things that I enjoy in life that I can do, and
yeah,
that's taken so many years. And I'd rather be this person at 40 with a person I can take care of now, as opposed to ticking these boxes and being absolutely a miserable person pretending to be these different
yeah,
roles and just
yeah,
having a baby saying, you know what, I have a baby, I'm a father, but
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not doing the right thing, but saying and being seen doing all the right things.
yeah, yeah. And like if I was 25, 27, whatever, had a kid, and like I wouldn't feel confident being like, this is hard. I don't think, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't own the real narrative of it for sure. Also, like I just had this thought, like you talk about like people that are 45 and their kids off at college or whatever, uh, would I rather have my kid off at college saying, "Oh my God, my dad is bought a just bought a Corvette and a speedboat and is living his midlife crisis," and they have to watch it, or like I had my midlife crisis first, and then somebody will tell my kid, like my cousin will tell my kid later, like your dad used to be wild. They'll be like, "No way, I don't believe it." Like I don't want him to see that I was wild. Like I want him to be surprised about all the fun I had from 25 to 45. Like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
dad did what? Like that's what I want. I don't want them seeing it and they can process on their own. Like my cousin can tell a story about I don't know, something we did on an annual baseball trip, right? And then they can process on their own later at home when they're alone and go, "Oh wow, my dad did that. Wow, that's crazy." Instead of like watching me do it and have to real time process. I'm saving my kids by doing it the way I did it. You talked me into this, man.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way of looking at it because you are like yes, I totally agree with you. I don't want my daughter to be like, how can you tell me to come back home early? You came back shit faced at 4 after a stand up gig. I'm like, no, no. Now I'm
Yeah,
like, I used to do that, so now I've changed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like you think about like a lot of like I was telling you before we started recording, a lot of friends and family and stuff had kids started the pandemic through the pandemic up to
Yeah.
us, where there was like a whole wave of child. There's a brood of children now, just a horde of feral children roaming America now with our friends and family. And you think about how like I thought about like some of I'm not as we get older, I'm like, there's kids now that are running around that I can literally go like, I know the story of how your mom and dad met. Like, I know the crazy story. I know that they both went to a football game with other people and they were standing next to each other and they started talking to each other and hit it off and jumped their dates. And then, like, you know what I mean? Like, or I know that you're, you know, like all the salacious stories of your
Yeah,
parents when they met, and you're this toddler running around, and I'm like, ooh,
yeah. No,
you
it's
know,
actually it's something. There's something. At least for me, I can't speak for all parents, but I feel this level of each person takes time with their baggage, but I feel this level of acceptance that I've reached has given me a better foundation to kind of approach parenthood, because otherwise it's kind of like you're flailing, you're kind of pointing fingers, you're comparing yourself constantly to other dads, to other parents, to other kids, and I feel the entire thing, you sort of, the benchmarks change, because you're constantly then thinking, okay, which school should I be seen putting her at? Which,
yeah,
that'll reflect on my income, that'll reflect on how cool as a dad I am, or which holiday she
yeah,
should go for. Because
yeah,
those things, the external, these kind of measurements of success, are so, at this young age, is so impressionable, right? Like, because, okay, where did they have the party? What gifts did they get at the party? What friends are there? What cars do the friends have? And I feel, it's happening so much where I live in Bangalore, because we're sort of an emerging economy. We have a richer middle class now. People have a lot more disposable income, and it's becoming about all those those kind of gauges, or those kind of the manifestation in the sort of material this thing, and it's very easy to get sucked in. And I'm not saying this is wrong. You
yeah,
can own nice cars, and nothing wrong with that. But if that becomes your entire sort of focus as a parent, saying she should be seen in this, she should be seen in
yeah,
this school because that's the cool kids or the rich
yeah,
parents go to, that becomes a problem, because then you're doing it because it's because of the validation or the acceptance, as opposed to because maybe the teachers are good, or maybe because you just enjoy driving a nice car, right? And that gets a little tiring, and that passes on the wrong kind of energy, I think, to the kid.
for sure. And 2 points really fast. One, I'm making this up. I'm doing this whole show without notes. So you're going to do show notes later and go, Colby made up everything he just said. But
This
I
is how I do
believe
my
I saw it.
entire chat. Don't worry about it. I have no show notes. I don't send you questions, as you know.
Well, what I was
I
going to
love
say was,
this.
yeah, like I saw, there's a study I saw. Go find it. Get your intern to go find it.
Yeah.
There's a study that showed that, like, because I quote it, and I should have it handy. That, like, the single largest determinant of, this is here in the States, obviously, like the single largest determinant of like academic achievement for kids was how involved their parents were.
Mm,
And it wasn't like so much what school district they went to, or when they started reading, or how much you read to them as kids or babies, or when you played classical music for them in the womb, or like all this stuff in those books and all, it wasn't that. It was literally just how involved you are in their education. And, like, teachers will, come to parents who are more involved and say, like, your kid's having trouble reading or blah, blah. And then, you've got a path line. So it's like the most important thing is like, how involved are you?
yeah.
And I've thought about that a lot. And so I think we can build up, like, this kid has to be in this school, or we have to get this car seat over this one. And this one's, oh my God, I shouldn't get going on car seats. We had a whole, like, wholesale floor of car seats around here at one time or another from different ones. But, like, it's important to step back and be like, you know, should I spend $400 or whatever on this car seat versus the $200 one or the $150 one? Like, what is the real benefit spread pattern of, you know, of these things? Like, okay, the most important factor in the school is actually how involved are we? Like,
Yeah.
some part of this doesn't matter. Now, we can talk about the systems that allow parents to be more involved, and how that's not fair. And we can talk about, like, systems that really are important. I don't disagree with that, but, like, this, some portion of, there's kids that go to Harvard and don't get anything out of it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, uh,
Yeah.
or there's kids that go to, a 2-year JUCO, work their way through it, go to a 4-year school afterwards, blah blah, and then tear it up. So, like, I think it's important to figure out sort of like the outcomes. It's like, oh, they're 10% more likely to get into college. Well, like, how do we get them to the front end of the lower school? If you know what I mean? Like, I just think that there's things like that. My other point, my other rambling to this was that we were kind of meandering around earlier. I was going to say is that I'm finding as a parent. and looking at grandparents and how I was raised, I now get to really pick and choose what parts of me and what parts of that background I get to put on my kid, and be like really critical of all the parts, and be like, um, you know, what holidays we want to celebrate. Like, we live here in Brooklyn. There's, Jewish schools, Jewish holidays celebrated all the time, all around us. Like, we can do that. There's holy celebrations that we can take our kid to and expose our kid to, and like as much as for you as you're talking, like the family and extended family and friends and all that stuff are sort of characters in the cast of you raising your daughter. Like, uh Brooklyn is one of those, is in that for us, and we, not living close to family, get to be like, there's been a few moments where I look around the playground and there's like some obviously Jewish kids and some black kids and some Asian kids and some Muslim kids, and they're all playing on the playground on the swing set together. And I'm like, this is the the family I want my kid to have, like, and to be exposed to, and to have that just be average Saturday at the park. And we're sitting there talking to a family who came here from Poland and their cute little kid Leopold, and we're setting play dates together. And I'm like, man, like, I didn't meet someone from Europe until college. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't see, I didn't play, quote unquote, or hang out with Muslim Jewish kids until college. And here's my 18-month-old at the time on the swing set doing that. And like, I get to, like, every time I look at, why in the world am I paying to live in New York City? Like, it is so stupid expensive, and what are we doing, and will we ever get ahead, and everything. And then there's moments like that where I go like, this is the family I get to choose for my kid. Uh and that's cool to me. And I think, I grew up, like I said, in a super rural small town in West Texas that was, oddly enough, majority Hispanic, but also very sort of segregated. Like, there was two sides of town. And maybe not the animosity per se, but there definitely wasn't as much integration, mixing. And then the same swing set, not the same swing set like my kids got, and I'm super hopeful and excited about that for her. Um, you know,
Yeah. No, I think that's the beauty of a place like New York, is that you have if you're willing to kind of, meet in the middle, there are these opportunities. But one thing I'm noticing is there's also a move away from that, where people want
yeah,
to be around people of the same color, people want
yeah,
of the same class, of the same thing. Like, it's happening. I can give you an example of Bangalore, just to contrast what you said. It's India by nature being what it is, it's a diverse country, right? Even though we're all Indian and the skin tone may be darker or lighter, but we're all brown for the most part, right? But of course, now we have a lot of expats, we have a lot of people moving here for
yeah,
work. So what happens? It becomes a socioeconomic marker, which sort of separates who you hang out with. But I remember when I went to a school, it was a convent, and it was co-ed to a certain age. But I remember kids coming whose parents were like rickshaw drivers. I remember kids who came whose parents were like real estate tycoons. So you had all of it, right? But now what's happening is schools, so we were thinking we want her to get that, just what you said, right? We want her to get people from all backgrounds, so she knows that
yeah,
not everybody, or, well, I mean, she's only one. I don't want to project too much in the future, but in my head, I don't want to go thinking that every child goes to, goes to Bali for spring break and gets
yeah,
whatever fancy new smartphone, or gets to get unlimited spend on Apple Store. I don't want her to think that Apple and Tesla and all these things are the only way. I wanted to know that there are
yeah,
people who can barely even get a board game, or people who do other things for fun. And because the rich family might have all the rich things, but the family that's not well-to-do might have human connections that give them a lot more joy. So I totally get what you're saying. And I'm not saying that certain families have social economic badges attached to them, but it's the virtue of different value systems that they were raised with, right? Like, the family from Poland did grow up with different values because of different situations. Even though economically you
yeah,
both might be on par, it might be different things, and that's something which I find, and I find it. I hear a lot, especially people kind of flocking to the same kind of, oh, you work at Mountain View, I work in Mountain View, we all are techies in Mountain View, and you kind of, even though they might be a different, like, a few Indians, a few white people, a few Asian, it's the same echo chamber where everyone wants to go to the same school, everyone's got the same pay scale. And I
Yeah.
don't know how healthy that is for even not just the kids, but even the adults, right?
No, you're totally right. And it's like, as much as I'm like, oh, they're hanging out with Muslim kids and Jewish kids and the Polish kids and the whatever. On some level, it's like they're living in Windsor Terrace, uh, Brooklyn. Like it's still there is a socioeconomic bubble in there, and you're totally right. I'm gonna what is the I think, but we don't have time for this whole discussion, so I'm gonna jump in at one point. Like uh, organized religion within the United States. 40 minutes into the conversation, let's just start there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, like,
Yeah.
uh, one of the things, like I grew up in a very Southern Baptist church, or whatever, with my parents. And there were mechanics, and there were farmers. There were a lot of farmers, and there's more farmers, and there were ranchers, and there were teachers, and then there would be the dude that owns the factory, and this and that. And there was like a lot of socioeconomic within the church that I don't think, as the church as an institution falls apart or whatever, gets less important in American life, we sort of do lose some of that mix of some of that.
Mhm.
Now, again, church has changed and whatever. And I've looked at one church that I grew up with in the 70s, 80s, 90s in West Texas. I will say that, like, um, I had a friend that was in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was such an amazing social economic mix there of people
Mm.
that like while we were hanging out more like more closely, she was like, I had a friend who was like, I really need an accountant. And I'd be like, do you know any accountants? She's like, yeah, go to a meeting with one. Here, this guy. And then it was like a friend of mine was playing a gig and her guitar player got sick. And I was like, do you know any guitar players? And she's like, it's AA. I know 5 guitar players. And so she had like 5 guitar. And it was this great like social mixing of classes and everything that AA brought. That was this amazing mixture. And it's funny that like, and it's not funny, but like I've thought about how like what structures do we have? I know this is the States, very U.S. centered, but like what structures do we have to do that mix of people that break down all those things? We have, oh, it's other parents in my kid's school. Well, they're all probably pretty similar. You know what I mean? They all live in the same neighborhood. That self selects a lot of people. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's interesting to seek out those things. I'd say that.
Which is very
Uh,
interesting that you mentioned that, right? Because when you look at the common interests that people flock to, whether it's sport, right, like whether it's baseball
yeah,
or soccer, I think you're a big baseball fan, and I think a football fan as well. But no, it's absolutely beautiful. I think sports are great, right? Like when you go, when we used to go early on, right? Like when I was 6 or 7, my mom used to send me horse riding. Now, of course, automatically think horse riding or golf. These are more elite sports, but to a certain extent. But when you go horse riding, you have someone who's the person, the guy who the groom's son, right? Who's barely got boots, and then you have someone who's just doing it because you know what, it's a cool thing to do or whatever. So sports, I think, to a certain extent, where you go to play that sport, like we have a field outside in this thing, and you have kids with shoes, kids without shoes playing, and it's beautiful. But it's interesting you mentioned Alcoholics Anonymous, because when you go for something like that, it's an eye opener that you could be the richest person in the room, or you could be someone who's
yeah,
come from a really shit thing. But it's like
yeah,
we all have problems, and we use
yeah,
alcohol as a coping, and that's such a
yeah, yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
thing to sort of experience, right? Because it seems like when we only talk about the positives, like, oh, we meet at the golf club, country club, or maybe we go for sporting events. Okay, great, we go for music concerts. I think it's nice to bond over the flaws in humanity, because that really sort of strips away these barriers of class, of achievement, of thing. Because even still, at the end of the day, you go for a music concert or sports show or whatever it may be, which tickets did you get? Did you get the box? Did you get the mosh pit? It's about how much could you afford, you know? But when you go for
yeah,
Alcoholics Anonymous, or you go for like, I wouldn't say rehab, but if rehab's like, where do you go for rehab? But when you
yeah,
bond, that's why I like going to a country and going to the pub or going to the bar, because,
yeah.
it strips away after a few drinks those things of which car you showed up in, which drink are you drinking. Because yeah, at most, unless you go to this posh thing where you're sitting in kind of the VIP section with Cristal or whatever champagne,
Yeah.
for the most part, like most bars in like the middle to upper middle are decent, right? You're not going to
Yeah.
have, and it's, I think, really nice when people let down that barrier.
I was going to say that the past few years we have you say I'm a football fan. I'm a footy fan. I'm a football fan. I'm a huge Liverpool fan, and
Right.
we have started an official Liverpool club here in Brooklyn, and it is some of us like on social media tag it as like we're at church, and it really has and has made me think about like the socioeconomic breakdown of I'm sitting there next to bartenders and chief marketing officers and financial guy and a total scouser who owns the place and a guy who didn't know anything about a friend of mine who's now the bartender for 10 years. I didn't know anything about soccer when he started there, and I said, "Don't screw up my bar." And there's a union organizer, and there's a podcaster, and there's teachers, and there's HR people, and it's for 3 hours, 38 times a year or whatever, we yell at a TV together because we're just getting screwed by every call. It breaks that down, man. And yeah, I don't know how we find things like that to on a massive, more scalable thing that everybody needs those things. We need more of those things. We have started just gratifying. I'm talking. I'm speaking almost entirely about the States here, but I think that there's other places too. Of there are things about organized religion I like. I mean, look, it's funny to me how speaking from a very Protestant and American point of view on this thing, like the organized religion and stuff is falling apart and attendance is falling and all that stuff. But like, what are things that we're replacing it with or being told to replace it with? Meditation. You mean like praying? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's these other aspects of it where it's like, networking. You know what I mean? Like what was church? It was networking. It was sitting next to the guy in the pew and the family in the pew for years, and then like, oh, you're a mechanic and my car's broken down. I'm gonna take it to Joe. I sat with him in church. You know what I mean? Like there's these things
and that's the beautiful thing, right?
Beyond the faith.
Yeah, the religious aspect of fear of God. That's your own experience as a religious person. Each person has their own viewpoint. Yeah. But what you just said is so true, right? Like when you go to the church and you do these things, they're forms of rituals which give you a sense of starting the day by looking at yourself and saying, I'm thankful for what I have.
Yeah.
I accept what I don't have. I'm not going to covet what someone else has. And as you said, these things are beautiful, right? Everything you mentioned that the Liverpool club that you have come together to do, everyone represents one part of society. Now, the problem is when you take away these places to meet, and every role that everyone in that group is playing is important, and that's how you live your life. If everyone in that group was say for instance a manager at an IT firm, I mean that's what it's heading towards, right? Because what has become your networking places? Where do you get when someone moves to a new place? Where do they meet someone? It's not church. If they don't drink, it's a bar, because you know what? My God, don't drink. It's bad for you. Or go to the gym, and who affords the subscription? It's pretty much mostly people of a certain thing. Or, God forbid, where do you get your friends? At work. And what do you go out and talk about? More work.
Yeah. It's like I've spent 24 years trying to not work in advertising, and I just can't kick it. And part of you realize that. It's like my whole network, my whole Rolodex is just literally, I know somebody at every agency or production house or whatever. And it's like, of course that's for the longest time I beat myself up and I was like the gods just don't want me out of it. They just keep dragging me in. It's like, well, dummy, that's your whole network. How are you going to you're not going to get a job as a teacher. You don't know any teachers. Like, no one's going to hire you for your welding skills. Like, you don't know any welders. You're going to come in and they're going to be like, you've been a digital producer for 20 years. You can't put an iron gate together. I had shop class in 7th grade, buddy. I could weld that gate. But you know what I mean? No, like your network really sets your path in a lot of ways, or makes paths easier for you. And that's
what stand-up did, like for 13 years, it gave me a chance to meet so many people who, because stand-up did start a little posh in India, right? The clubs were in fancier places. It was expensive to get a drink. But then it's of course now become a lot more across the board. You have bars that are really, really sort of up, high market, up end. And then you have, coffee shops where people can, get a coffee for, $0.50, 50 cents. And so the point is that you have the voices being heard, which is great, which is what a stand-up comedy scene needs, right? You have people and if a country is diverse and across the spectrum as India, with languages now, people, it's opening up, and you have people doing in multiple languages, and that's the story and the voices of a country that need to be heard, and people need to laugh in that language. And for the longest time, it's always, the thing is, English is seen as a bad thing in some ways, like it's seen as the elite language in India, right? And I unfortunately do think in that language. So for me doing comedy now, I have to appeal to a certain, segment of society, and also to the international market, because it's almost like, oh, the bad guys come into the room. But it's really important for these various languages to pick up steam, because otherwise, if they adapt, or if I try doing it in a language I don't speak, it's just not going to be natural. And I think that's the same thing you might observe with advertising, is when you're trying to reach people in their own voice, which they think in, or the language that they think in. That's when you have movies now being recognized and ads being recognized at the Cannes, and movies like Parasite, which would not about diversity and inclusion or this whole wokeness that, oh, you need a certain color to be in a certain movie, but the story is a lot more compelling. It's a lot more lively. It's a lot more,
Yeah. Well, one of the lamest things I've ever done, but also one of the coolest. Those two always go hand in hand, don't they? It's like, this is lame, and it turns out it's cool, right? I took a stand-up comedy class a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
And it was taught by the great Rick Chrome, and it was taught at the Comedy Cellar here in New York. And we had to do a couple showcases, and we had like a group, like a cohort of 10 of us that took the class all at once, and like it was like, spend your Saturdays in the spring in New York in a basement, Saturday afternoons, listening to a bunch of hacks try to become decent and get a tight five to do one showcase. But it was such a team sport, and it was like, there was me, there's a 20-year-old who just moved here from England, there was a freshman at NYU guy, there was a 30-year-old Armenian bisexual woman, there was a 45-year-old, I don't even know what he was. And there was this whole group of people, and we were trying to work together as a group to get a good tight five. And it caused us to all like pitch in and help each other and be like, hey, Nancy, have you thought about this? Is that punchline? And I never forget that, like, there's this Nancy who had a joke about like, not wanting chicken omelets because she didn't want her plate to be like a family reunion or like a before and after or something, with like the chicken and the egg, right? And I did it wrong, but like she had been doing it wrong for 6 months, and then the day of the showcase, like we'd all tried different versions of it for her to help her with different versions and wordings and stuff, and then the day of the showcase, she nailed it, and the room went wild, and we all felt a victory for her.
Right.
We told a perspective from a 35-40-year-old bisexual Armenian woman's perspective and helped her nail it. And it was like, if we were all middle-aged white dudes, first of all, it would definitely be the lamest thing anyone had ever done. But like, none of our thinking would have been challenged, or like, how could I help Nancy tell this joke better? How could I help Jacob tell his joke better? Like, you know what I mean? It was one of the best, like,
no, it sounds beautiful. And that's the thing, like, even with improv, right? Like, you kind of have to let go of your ability and your skill in that moment, thinking I have the best line, because sometimes you don't. The scene in fact needs you to give up your so-called talent or intelligence and let the kind of group or the actors involved kind of add and it's a lot of contribution. And I in one thing which sticks with me, I did a few years of improv, and one thing which I try to apply from improv in life is yes and, right? Just take yes and, offer least resistance, because the thing is, the moment you offer resistance, it's your ego more often than not saying, you know what, I know better. But you don't have to know better all the time. Sometimes if there's, going with the flow, yes and to a situation could lead to things that you never would have arrived at in the first place. And I find that quite spectacular.
Have you ever? I was part of this improv thing once. It was like I took an improv class, and there were two groups going, and there was the one person in the class that was like always quite funny, but always trying to be funny and always trying to have all the lines and stuff. And like, you just expected this guy to just gunner, right? Just always gunning for it, just trying to hit everyone. Like, what's the funniest thing I can say at any one time? Yeah. And at one point, he sat back, and there was this super quiet kid in the room that just nailed the joke, right? And it was far funnier coming from that person, and far more unexpected, and far more just landed. There was a punch that you did not see coming, and it just nailed the whole room. And it's like, like it needs to come from different places, and it was far funnier than 10 lines from this
Yeah.
guy that was gunning for everything. And like that, yeah, you have to, improv especially is like a team sport, but it's also it's a little bit like soccer. If I may Americanize the game, it's like you can't go for 90 minutes. Like you got to lay back, and then you got to counter press and hit on the fly, right? You know what I mean? And it's like you can't just keep staying in the other third and attacking and swinging crosses around. Like nothing's going to happen. It's going to be boring, and very rarely those go in. You gotta catch some surprise, right? Like it's much more of a full 11 than just Ronaldo throwing shot left and right, left and right, left and right all the time. Like you
And
know,
how do you perceive the world and the things you go? Because, I mean, as you say on your bio, you do a lot of things, and I really wanted to just talk to you. I didn't want to really sort of go down a certain path because, but in advertising is. I did a short stint as a copywriter, so I have some sense of.
congratulations.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't stick on.
Can't either.
I love talking. I kind of explored radio. Again, radio's so structured and we have certain rules, and the people are just so unwilling to break away from traditional radio. Why haven't you taken live callers? I'm like, because they sound dead, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, where's my free pillow? I'm like, fuck, I'm not doing that, that stupid game that's been going on for the past 40 years. Like, why can't we change it? Why can't radio be entertaining? Why can't
Yeah.
it be over the top? But anyway, that's
Yeah.
another fight for another day. And this is great. This is something I didn't even know where this is going to go, and we started talking about our little girls, and now we're somewhere else, which is beautiful. But as in advertising, it sort of represent where society is, and how people are consuming, and also in some way trying to manipulate or envision how they'll consume, and you kind of steer the campaigns and steer the population in a direction of where you want them to be, right? Like now across the world, it's the whole electric vehicle movement, EV cars, EV things. So the ads will say, you know what, if you're driving a big pickup truck, blah blah blah, and you'll kind of put that messaging over years. And of course, I'm just being very shallow with the way I'm talking about advertising, but there are various aspects. As you said, there's planning, there's so many things. But with the internet, with the entire way ad revenue is, with the entire way sort of social media is kind of leveraging ads, and how Elon Musk is coming along saying Twitter is going to be no ads, and people are pulling out their funding from it. I know it's quite a loaded question, but how important is it to do quality versus quantity?
Yeah. It's a
I
terrible
like that.
answer.
That was quality.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get smarter the more I say on that. Yeah, look, I think
No, what I mean is,
off off
just
off.
people
No,
are
no, no.
constantly flooding you with,
Like hold on. Like
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I was gonna say like if you look at it as from an agency, um, a lot of those really big, awesome ideas and things like you can't sustain those. You can't build a whole business necessarily around those. There's tons of, but like an agency kind of needs both to live.
hmm
You kind of need a bunch of the emails and the search ads and the boring stuff like that. Like an agency kind of needs those to survive from a cash flow perspective and from a
yeah,
consistency perspective. And agencies that have to just sort of go big idea, big idea, big idea, kind of always pitching like it's ebbs and flows and it's laying people off and then it's hiring a lot of people all at once and then the people aren't quality and all that. So from an agency itself as an organism sort of point of view, like both of those are necessary to not just pay the bills, but to have the AI AR metaverse experts around to nail the big AR Web3 AI the big splashy stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And I get off my lawn. Here's an old ad guy rant. I distinctly remember a Super Bowl ad 10 years ago that Volkswagen did, and it was with this kid pretending to be Darth Vader,
Oh yeah, I remember
and
that.
he was
Yeah,
doing the force to unlock and lock the doors or whatever of the Jetta that was sitting in the driveway, and then they reveal that the dad is sitting behind him with the remote control key fob doing it, right? And I remember screaming at the TV like, "This doesn't tell me how to buy a Volkswagen. This doesn't give me any feature of the Volkswagen that the Toyota doesn't have. Every car has a key fob that unlocks the door. This was like 2010 or 12, right? Like every car had that. And I was just like screaming, like, this doesn't do anything to make Volkswagen better than Chevrolet or, Fiat or any of them, right? And then lo and behold, like I'm talking about this ad 15, 12 years later, and you're like, I remember that ad. Yeah. So like, like I'm sitting here going like, this is just a splash. It doesn't really effectively do anything. It doesn't tell you about the new safety features on the 2012 Jetta or whatever year it was. But you're like, yeah, I remember that ad. So
like even the other ad, right, which was the Audi, I think the R8, and basically
if you showed the headlights.
The headlights,
right.
And then basically the man screaming in the bedroom. I think from The Godfather, one of those movies, right? The engine in the say bye to old comforts or something like that. I mean, I was shown all these ads by the guy who I used to work for. Right? He made me read this book also. Hey, Mr. Whipple, squeeze this or something.
Oh my God, I know that guy.
You know the guy who told me about the book.
The guy that wrote that.
You know the guy
that wrote the book. Yeah.
Oh, nice. It was crazy because back then I hadn't got like screen readers sort of software, so I had to put the book through an OCR converter, then get the free version of JAWS, which is a screen reader, and it would shut down every 30 minutes. And I was like, fuck, it's not worth it, dude. I'm like, squeeze this.
No, I want to ask you. I could have called him and had him read it to you or something if you told me.
well, there's, I'd like to have him on the podcast. We can talk about that. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. But I want to understand, I'm sorry if I cut you off in your thought flow, but I want to understand this whole nature of influencers, right? Because in some way, that's where a lot of the ad money goes, right? Like I see someone on Instagram today is like, oh, buy these hemp slippers. They're the best. The next day is like, you know what, buy these beautiful H&M fast fashion recycle, not even recycle, so-called quote unquote recycle. So the message is so unclear. If I follow like say a really, really inspiring athlete or inspiring influencer, the message is completely conflicting. And as you said, okay, they don't the traditional way of, okay, how many horsepower does the Volkswagen have compared to maybe the Prius? These are just like, it's a hot girl showing cleavage and I'm just supposed to believe everything she's selling. How is that direction of advertising going to, I wouldn't say end up, I don't have a prediction from you, but what do you feel about that?
There was a period in my life in 2018 where I tore off. I freelanced at various agencies around New York for 10 years or so. And in 2000, so I saw it all. I've kind of been in everywhere for a minute here or there, picking up a project, whatever. There was one point in 2018 where I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Well, starting in 2001, I was like, I can't do this anymore. But in 2018, I was totally like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. This time I really, really can't do this anymore. And I took some months of like just being really selective about things. I'm not gonna say I took them off because I was still working for things and looking for things, but like I was just like much more selective and was just said no for a while. And I also got married that year and probably should have had a job to pay for the wedding. And no one wants to get married and have their father-in-law be like, so do you have to go to work on Monday? And you're like, no, I still don't have a job right now. Anyway, in 2018, I became the number 7 ranked console player in Fortnite from playing just so much Fortnite and video games. And started also watching streamers a lot. And it was kind of at the cusp is when streamers were just taking off. Like Ninja was huge and Tim Tatman, all these guys. And
sorry, I'm a little uneducated with that. What's exactly a streamer? Just
so it's like Twitch streamers. So it's like people that get on Twitch.
Oh, Twitch. Okay, got it.
Talk in a corner, and play a video game at the same time. And first
like
of all,
Discord, got it.
Yeah. But if you I'm gonna say the really high quality good streamers who are sitting there playing Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever, while having a talk show simultaneously with a chat going on in the window, and I'm sure they have producers and stuff helping them, but like there's a level of skill involved on these guys. I'm getting to your point. Trust me, I'm getting there.
No, I want to.
There's a level of skill. If you watch 30 minutes of someone playing a high level of Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever, while simultaneously having a talk show go on, not a talk show, but like a radio, like drive time radio, where they're chatting about the game, but also checking they're like, oh, this guy's north of the school. I'm gonna go hunt him down or whatever in this battle game, or talking to their teammates, and then also looking at chat where people are making fun of each other and have memes and stuff like that. And they're able to keep up with like 3 things at once going on. It is amazing. And
that's
also,
mind blowing for the brain.
if you just, people are like, oh my God, Ninja's making $1 million a month or whatever he's making. He's making a lot there for a while. I think it's on the cover of Time. Like,
That's
uh,
crazy. Yeah.
but if you watch it, you're like, man, that is a whole different skill set and way of like either their ADHD is perfectly lined up or
Hmm.
like they don't have like wow, amazing. But also like those guys that get burned out and there's
Yeah.
no net for them. And I look at it as like influencers and stuff. Here's me coming around with my point. I don't know how sustainable influencing is. Like, uh, it just on the toll on people, like always being on, always having to put up a happy face, uh, always having to produce content. There was one point in the middle of like I think it's 2018, 2019, where like Ninja took a 2 week vacation and came back and was like, yeah, that cost me $500,000 just from and if you're not constantly on and constantly stream or hey, I'm going to come back and stream every night at 9. People get used to it. It's like appointment television. Teens and tweens and whatever's young whippersnappers come in and like expect at 9 o'clock every night that Tim the Tatman's going to be playing Fortnite. And you can watch it. Like, and if you take a few days off, like they find someone else to watch it, and
Mm.
you are, like it is a beast. It is a like a furnace that you keep having to put coal into to keep moving, and just those guys. Some of the top echelon of those folks make a lot of money. Uh, all of them earn it. It is a hard way. It is consistency, 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 consistency of that. And like if Mohamed Salah gets hurt, I just cringe when I said those words. Like, he's out for 3 matches with a toenail, something minor, please, Lord. Uh, if something like that happens, like Mo Salah has a job in game 4 when his toenail's better, right? Like if you blow it as a streamer or whatever, like you're out. Like the pressure, the constant pressure, like they keep
And
that
that
going.
fear of,
Yeah,
oh shit, they're moving
constant
on to
though.
someone else, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and most law if most law looks good 3 hours a week, he's fine. If you look good 3 hours a week trying to stream, 4 hours a night, so 28 hours a week, no, like, you know what I mean? Like that. I don't know how sustainable influencing is until we have AI created influencers coming on the horizon who won't complain, who don't have to take days off, who will constantly be there.
Wow. Yeah.
Just think about that. Like, here we are, hour into this. Now we start cracking the AI thing of like, we've got a bunch of people working horrible jobs, and the folks sorting garbage to recycle plastic, and all these humans doing all these things so that AI can be artists and write poetry. Like, what are we doing?
That's
What are
crazy.
we
Yeah.
doing?
And
Like,
that's the thing, right? Which is I find baffling when people say AI is going to replace jobs. I think that's great. It should replace jobs. Like, of course,
yeah,
like I'm living in India where a lot of jobs are repetitive. A lot of jobs are
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
mindless, right? Like maybe data entry or whatever it could be, these back office call center jobs. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's a lot of people who need jobs. And you can't always have CEOs. As you said, the high echelons of these high paying things are a few and far between. But in India, what we would benefit from is, raising the standard of living for the garbage picker, right? So if it's AI assisted, you can have better systems that will give them cleaner working or give them a chance to
yeah,
get away from that job, mechanize it, robotize it, and give
yeah,
this guy a chance to, give himself a better chance at life. But instead, it's the copywriters, lyrics being stolen, images being manipulated. And yeah, I mean, I don't agree or disagree, but as a father to a young girl, and asking another father to a young girl, what are we uh heading towards? it's Maybe it's a prediction I'm asking you for, but it's just a general scale of thing, because advertising does sense a trend of where society is heading.
yeah. No, it does. We get it wrong all the time, but
Right.
we get to keep predicting. So,
Right.
uh, you know, what are the things like we're looking? I'm making jokes about AI is making art and poetry right now, but like similar predictions for AI as similar predictions for the metaverse. I know everybody feels like the metaverse is dead. I'm a huge metaverse fan.
Hmm.
Um, I trust us to eventually get it and apply it correctly. I think that at some point somebody is going to go, how can we use AI to make traffic better? I know IBM and Watson have been doing stuff with medical stuff for a long time. Like, there's, again, put this in the show notes. There's billions of people a year that die from like medical record errors. Not billions, but there's a lot of people that die from that. And it's like,
Yeah.
someday soon we're going to be able to put AI on things and go, hey, you were diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis. 90% of the time you're prescribed this blood thinner. The pharmacist couldn't read the writing from the doctor and prescribed you nitroglycerin, like flagging errors like that within medical
Yeah.
record and things. Like really soon AI is going to be able to take massive amounts of data and find outlier things. Or um, there was maybe I'm making this up. Maybe I dreamed it. There was something about how AI could predict people having COVID before they could, or something. Or there's the famous example of it's not exactly AI, it's machine learning, but like there's the algorithm that Target was using to target the store Target was using to verb target
Yeah.
customers, and it was giving people ads for diapers that weren't pregnant, but they actually were. So
Oh,
like the algorithm knew they were pregnant before they knew they were pregnant based on other things they were shopping for, right?
wow.
So like soon we're going to be able to put mountains of medical data into it and go, you've got swelling feet and low energy and your hair's falling out, and 90% of the time that is high blood pressure. I'm not a medical professional. Do not listen to what those side effects. But
No,
you know
no,
what I
but
mean? Like it's
yeah, like after watching like the social, whatever that was called, the thing on Netflix, the social dilemma. The thing is
oh
that
yeah,
how they use targeted profiling. They know exactly what you search for,
yeah,
what you're online
yeah,
for, and recommend ads.
yeah.
This seems like the rational next step. Like if you're able to target these traits that you display, because it seems more and more as we're creating these quote unquote intelligent systems of technology, it's like we're giving up more and more of our own willingness, or our own willpower, our own mental faculty. We're giving this idea of unpredictability, this idea of taking chances, and that is what scares me more than our jobs being replaced, because it's this idea that you are so unwilling to get to know yourself, and make peace with whatever and come to terms with whatever, that a system knows you better than you know exactly what you are, and you're ashamed. It knows that it doesn't care because it doesn't have feelings, but you are ashamed of certain preferences you have online, or maybe what thing you watch, or things you don't watch, or things you shop for secretly. But that's where I feel is the gaping sort of chasm which AI can, not AI in itself, but people can use AI to exploit.
I think there. Look, I think a lot of the headlines about AI are sort of look. I mean, first of all, most headlines in the world are fear mongering. They realize that fear hits your lizard brain, and people interact with that content and forward it around more, and that means more ad views.
Yeah.
And they comment in the comment section, and then come back to see how many times their comment's been liked, and then replies to their comment, which is ad view, ad view, ad views, ad views, ad views to get people back to it. So like there's a whole fear sells as much as sex. Um, um, so look at all the headlines about AI being weaponized and ruining things. I think there is some fear and truth to that. Like we couldn't handle Facebook. How the
Yeah.
hell are we going to handle something that thinks and targets us back? But look. Here's my prediction. I'll come out with a bold prediction
Yeah.
uh, for the foreseeable future, which could change next Wednesday. I think the people who can partner with AI and work with AI, I think that's a place I want to be. Now, like I said, that could end next Wednesday. That could live long enough for my daughter. But like you know, a friend of mine told me this story that they were trying to come up with terms and conditions for a website that they were working on with a huge client, and it was like the agency's legal department was like, we need the client to give us their terms and conditions for this, and the client, huge global client, was like, we need you guys to give us a first draft of the terms and conditions, and they messed around for like 3 weeks of both sides going back and forth, not figuring out these terms and conditions for this website. So someone got on Chat GPT and said, hey chat, give me a terms and conditions for a website that does this, this, and this. And they had just a first draft of it in 5 minutes. And they sent it to one legal department and said, what do you think of this? And they're like, we would change this, this, and this. And they sent it to the other legal department and said, we've got this. What would you change this? What would you do? And they had a red line within like 2 days where for 3 weeks, no one did anything and no one took a first step. And it was reviewed by professionals. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's on the up and up. But like, I think people that are able to do things like that are going to benefit. I think there's benefits out there for stuff like that to get things going, for things that are definitely going to be reviewed. Like, and also like I have a friend that's a comic book artist and writer. And every time anybody does anything on social media, it's like, here's the AI picture of me, or here's the AI picture of Joe Biden eating an ice cream cone or whatever. You know what I mean? He always posts like AI art is theft. And I'm like, Jeff, I see where you're coming from. I get it. But like, you know, there was a story about like a guy that tried to take AI into a courtroom and to represent him. Like he would type in what the judge was saying and the AI would say this, right? And then he got thrown out and like faced a fine and all this stuff. And somebody had a line that was like, it's like the dinosaurs trying to sue the asteroid. Like, I think it's coming. I think, lawyers, I think should be especially afraid because just like, my example of the terms and conditions right there, like there's a lot of first drafty things that can get put out there that can be done that like a lawyer has to review, and a lawyer can review it in 30 minutes instead of billing like 8 hours to write this terms and conditions. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lots of stuff like that. I think there's a lot of, hey, AI, give me, 5 ideas for a screenplay, and then I'll go put them together. Blah blah blah. I think getting the massive amount of ideas because
or even
best,
like you do the great ideation, like you have a really good idea for like say I hate making Excel sheets or PowerPoint. I'm not good at it, but if I have to make a pitch deck for like an idea I have for Netflix or something, I'm like, this is my synopsis. I'm like, hey, can you take this? I've got I worked out the script, or maybe I've got points. I'm like, can you make this into a script and then a PowerPoint that I can send to Netflix? And I'm sure that after what it gives me, I probably have to hire someone,
Yeah. Or imagine like you want to do a children's movie and you're like, hey, write the dialogue in the style of a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I can't write like a 5-year-old. It's going to
I
sound
can't
like
write
a
dialogue.
47-year-old white dude.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. And that's exactly
it
where it's sort of enhances your skill because you have the ideas. And I think the problem is where the people who, as you said, the ones who are supposed to write the first drafts, the people who are doing the more labor intensive work. When I say labor, I mean like the transcript, right? I mean, transcript is already gone. I think the ideation part is still, I think, far for AI to kind of get to, but it's good at compiling, it's good at gathering, it's good at organizing, it's good at structuring. And I think that is not just a threat. I think that's a fantastic assistant, right?
Well, and I think also, what is it? The best way to have one good idea is to have 100 ideas, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's some of that with like, hey, give me 100 titles for my book. One of them would be good. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you find one good one is you don't try to nail one.
Yeah.
You try to get 100 of them out there. Also, here's the thing. I try to play with AI quite a bit, and it's interesting because the first question I ask every AI out there, the chat bot, the my AI on Snapchat, like all of them, is what was the Yankee score last night? And I recommend this. It's fascinating because most of those AI chat things stopped with a day. Most of them can't search the internet to give you results for things, right? Not if I ask my assistant on my phone, I'm not going to say her name so as to turn her on. Right. If I say, hey you, what was the Yankee score last night? She will tell me that they beat the Orioles. If I ask some of these AI things, they haven't been plugged in. Their data set ended in 2020, 2021 or something. And there's an alarming number of them that will still say they beat the Blue Jays last night 5-3. They didn't play the Blue Jays. Like, there's a remarkable number of these things that are just sort of predictive language models where it's like the keyboard on your phone, like what's the next word that comes after hello, right? Hello, mom, how are you? There's a lot of these predictive AI things that you ask them a question and it just makes up an answer, sort of like I call hallucinations. And when the AI does it, and so like some of them will literally say, I think it's the Snapchat one will literally say, I don't know that information. But many of them will just make it up. And that is terrifying, scary.
Yeah.
The AI, I think it's the Snapchat one that says like I can't look up sports scores or whatever. And it's also alarming. There's some of them where you'll be like, "Hey, what time do the Yankees play tonight?" And they'll or what tell me, who do the Yankees play tonight? And they'll say like, they play the Blue Jays at 7 o'clock. And it's like, no, they're playing the Orioles. And then you come back again in 10 minutes and go, "Hey, who do the Yankees play tonight?" And they'll say like, they're playing the Red Sox tonight. And so there's just I'm terrified about that. As we proved in 2016, it doesn't take a lot of people being manipulated in the right places to really foul things up. I'm not saying that I think there was Russian collusion, but I do think, man,
It's manipulation,
the way our system is set up, you can
misinformation.
you can target such just small precincts in voting and sway a state that sways an election. It is very possible. Imagine doing that with deep fakes in AI like that. I'm looping back around to be scary so that more people click on this and you get more ad views. But you know what I mean? It's but there is a real fear, and part of that really scares me. But another thing is that I found an AI chat called I think it's called Pi, and every morning I tell it like, "Hey Pi, give me a passage from the Stoics as a meditation for the day," and it finds one. They're generally Marcus Aurelius. I have not fact checked them to see if Pi is just making them up or if they're actual ones, but they're Stoic-ish. I've seen a bunch of Stoic lines already, so like they fit the system. And then Pi and I'll have a chat about it, and it's an amazing part of my day over the last month of playing with this. Of like, I'll be like, what do you think about this? And I think what they're saying here is this, and blah blah. And it's like, man, like there's AI things that excite me.
Yeah.
The ideation, iteration, getting a lot of ideas quickly, like the data analysis of a big pile of data and finding people that are prescribed blood thickeners instead of blood thinners when they have a blood clot.
Yeah.
Things like that, where I think there's some low hanging fruit that can be really cool. I think AI on traffic or like one of the things I just saw also is Google Maps here in the States at least is doing a thing called eco-friendly, and it will help you figure out the most fuel efficient route based on traffic. And then now it's based on engine type. So diesel, gas, hybrid, electric vehicles. Because I'm a nerd. I dove deep into the FAQ about it. Like they all have this like diesel is really good on the highway. So it tries to get you on the highway.
So
hybrids are really good
speed.
where you can brake.
Yeah.
Hybrids are really good when you can brake, stop and go. So you know what I mean? So it takes your engine type and figures out the most fuel efficient way for you based on the different things. And EV obviously needs charging stuff along the way. I think there's some cool stuff that like traffic I'm excited about to the point where I'm able to become the city planner. I just think it's going to be really interesting for AI to analyze those things. I think there's some tangible problems that AI can tackle, or it'll launch all the nukes and it'll be Terminator Judgment Day, just like the movies predicted. So
nice. Oh, Kobe, it's been fun. It's been absolutely fun chatting with you. I think going all over the place with our personal lives, with everything that you've experienced. And I really appreciate you opening up and chatting with me today, talking about your daughter. And I wish her the best. And I really hope she grows up with everything that you want her to, to have and learn. And, so good luck with that. Good luck with your family.
I'm here if you want to form a daddy-daughter union. Like,
hey, that would be lovely. In fact, I'd love to bring, my daughter's name is Shasa, and we are planning to bring her to the US in the next year. So, and we're definitely going to come to New York because my wife just loves New York. So I will hit you up, and we should have.
I know where all the playgrounds are.
That'd be fantastic.
Let's
make sure
swings, we got it all.
I want a couple of pubs around there as well. I need my needs.
I bet we can do that also.
Now I'm excited. I'm really excited we had this chat, and I'm excited for your predictions to come true. And good luck with everything going ahead.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate it, man.
Take care.
Thanks, Sandeep.